It's the Anime Movie Podcast with your hosts, Kat and Joe. Hey. Guess what today is? Take a guess, Kat.
I don't know, Joe. What day is it?
It's Action Movie Monday on the AMP. Action Movie Monday on the AMP.
Monday.
And today, we're talking about Sword of the Stranger.
Oh, damn. That's a good voice.
That was a pretty good voice. That was a good
trailer voice.
It was a good trailer voice for like the late 80s.
I'd give you 90s too, for sure.
Early 90s, late 80s.
Yeah, they even used that voice on rom-coms. It was really weird.
That is true.
It was just always this intense, gravelly, low voice.
Yeah.
A girl meets a boy. You're like, will they kill each other? What's happening?
Well, luckily there's none of that going on in our movie today. The Sword of the Stranger. This is a 2007 movie directed by Masahiro Andô and produced by the animation studio Bones. We were very confused because at the beginning credits of this movie, it just says story by Bones. And we're like,
is that somebody's name?
Is there a dude named Bones?
But that's not their given name.
No, absolutely not.
Right. This director doesn't seem to have done a lot of other movies of note.
Has he done any series or anything?
He's been an animator and key animator on a few things. He was an animator on Ghost in the Shell.
Oh, okay.
He was also an animator on an episode as a key animator of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
JoJo.
I mean, he's actually got a huge IMDb page, but not very much as a director.
Yeah. Well, he's making his way up the ranks. Maybe, I guess, has he not had anything after this? Necessarily directing films or anything?
Seems like more series work.
That's interesting. Because from what I've read, like this movie was pretty well received. It's on a lot of lists that I've seen that were like, this is kind of an underrated movie. And yeah, I mean, it got nominated for a bunch of awards, which I'm now calling into question. Like, because every movie that we've watched is nominated for a bunch of awards and wins a bunch of awards. So now I'm kind of like, I don't know the prestige of these festivals and awards or whatever. Not to say that I think that this is a bad movie. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the story a lot. There were some characters that I found insanely annoying.
I think this is an extremely okay movie.
Yeah.
Like very, very middle of the road. Fine.
I think I'm a little more into it than you are, but
yeah.
I can see where you're coming from. I can totally see where you're coming from. And I'm sure once we get into like the criticisms of it, you might bump my number down.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, like from the get-go, I'll say my overall criticism is, why should I care about anyone in this movie? And is this movie trying to say literally anything?
Okay.
I'm just like, I don't have any takeaways.
Yeah.
I'm like, I could have spent my time this evening in worse ways. Like I'm not like, I don't want my time back exactly. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. So let's talk about the story a little bit, like non-spoilery stuff. The story is surrounds a child who is being basically hunted by the Ming warriors, and they want him for some mysterious reason that we're going to get into later. And he happens across an old like mercenary samurai type dude, and through
that old.
Well, yeah, he's not that old, but
You mean kind of sort of like
yeah,
ex samurai?
that's what I meant.
Sort of a samurai without a clan or a lord or a leader.
Yeah, he's I would say he's kind of like, I guess, a retired samurai. Like, he's out of the samurai business, and he happens upon this guy, and then they get into some adventures, and they get caught up in all this hoopla with the Ming and the Japanese soldiers. There's like Ming soldiers warring with, I forget the name of the other band of soldiers, what they were
Like
called.
Akaike?
Yeah, something like that. I know that starts with an A. Um, and
Yeah.
yeah, and the Ming are trying to capture the kid for a mysterious reason. And then there's like a bunch of other kind of power struggles going on that are kind of B stories.
Yeah, I feel like themes of this movie are, power and also barbarism, as in like who's a barbarian, what counts as being barbaric,
Hmm.
xenophobia, and what it means to be foreign or I had something else.
I would also say it's like learning from your mistakes or growing as a person a little bit.
Oh, exoticism.
Oh, exoticism.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's another one.
yeah,
I
it
feel
is
like I
like
feel
the.
like if your movie has nothing to do with growing as a person or learning from mistakes, there's just absolutely no point to your movie. I mean, it could, unless it's an abstraction or you know,
Mm.
but like characters in some way should grow. Otherwise, your film doesn't have anyone with a character arc. So nothing has happened in your film that's worth changing over or changing any minds or just kind of like,
You know what I was thinking about this?
hmm,
No, I'll save it for spoilers
okay,
because there's some details that I need to elaborate on in order to back up my thesis here,
sure.
and I can't do that in a non-spoilery thing.
I won't make you.
But yes, they're the two main warriors in this. They're not from the country that they're fighting for. Like, the Ming top warrior is like a foreigner, like blonde dude with blue eyes, and he's like, whoa.
It's called
Every
like Luo Lang.
Yeah, Luo Lang, and everyone's like, this guy's fucking crazy. Like, he's the blonde devil or
He's
whatever.
over 6 feet tall.
Yeah, and then the one of the main characters is like, he doesn't know where he's from, and he's kind of, it seems like he's worked as a mercenary. A lot of people have hired him, a lot of different people, and he talks about how he's had like a bunch of different masters, and he's just kind of trying to leave that life behind.
Well, he's samurai.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of sounds like they're both naturalized wherever they grew up,
Yeah.
but that their family wasn't from there, or that they came over when they were really young, so they're not foreign in the way that they came over in their adult life, and they're still kind of learning the ways. They've definitely been naturalized into these societies, but I mean, this is taking place quite a long time ago,
Hmm.
at a time when things were less globalized. It was a lot less frequent to have foreigners being naturalized into different countries.
Yeah. I was wondering, like, this is what I wanted to see prequels of certain characters.
Mm.
That's what I wanted to see. Because it seemed like they had interesting backstories, and they're only alluded to.
Or get flashbacks of
Yeah, little
backstories. So.
flashbacks and stuff. I'm like, that seems like a really interesting thing too. Like, that, I would like to see that.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I thought it was all right. I mean, I feel like at the end our amp numbers are probably going to be close, but I think that, I mean, mine's definitely going to be higher than
Yeah,
yours.
probably. When you've told me about a restaurant and you're like, I mean, the food's not good,
Hmm.
but it's distinctly mediocre.
Yeah.
But you're not, I mean, don't expect much. Like,
Yeah, it's not going to blow your mind, but it will fill you up, and it won't be offensive to your palate.
That's kind of how I felt about this movie.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the mediocre diner of anime action movies for me.
There you go. All right. Yeah. I mean, I'm a little, I'm fairly amped about it. I'm pretty decently amped about it. But yeah, I mean, it didn't blow me away.
Sure.
It was good. The action scenes were pretty fucking rad.
I
I
did see some new ways I hadn't thought for people to die in before.
Yeah, and there were also just like a wide variety of weapons that I had never seen before, and I was like, "Whoa, that's pretty cool."
Mm.
So, but then there was also just like a lot of time between those action scenes. It seemed like, and I was like, kind of. I mean, it's not
Like
a
movie,
long.
learn your strong suits,
Yeah, right.
and play them a little more often because this is what you're good at. Try
Yes.
not to.
You could have like it's not a long movie. It's only 94 minutes long, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt like it could have, you could have shortened some of that. There's like a load of action, and then there's just like long periods of no action. I'm like, we could have chopped down a little bit of that no action.
I feel like there's a lot of animal violence in this, and that always loses me a little bit.
Oh, really? Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you don't want to see animal violence, even animated animal violence, this movie's not for you.
I don't think I've ever seen so much animal bloodshed in a film that wasn't literally just about killing animals.
I feel like that's just how it was back then, though. Like, if your main sources of transportation are horses,
Mm.
dude, horses are gonna get fucking whacked. You know what I mean? And not even like on purpose. Like, if you were just like shooting a bow and arrow and you missed, the horse is gonna eat that bow and arrow.
But I think like you pick and choose where you decide to put your realism because I'm sure that at the time a lot of women were being raped in these
Oh,
situations as well, but we didn't have to watch it. And
that's
luckily
true.
they didn't go there.
Yeah, there's not a lot of women in this movie, period.
True.
There's only like two or three, and they don't really have much to do with anything.
That
Oh
might
wait,
be
no,
like a
there's
subconscious reason why some of it was upsetting for me too.
well, actually, there was like on the bad guys, there were some women warriors.
Oh yeah, and they were kicking ass for
Yeah, they were
sure.
badass. But the ones that weren't warriors, it was just like, yeah,
I mean, I was about to say that there weren't, sort of women of substance as far as characters go, but there weren't many men of substance either as far as like characters go. The character development was pretty shallow. It's
yeah,
pretty scratching the surface.
yeah. Yeah. Aside from like a couple of main characters, like there's not. I don't know. You want to just get into spoilers?
Yeah, let's do
Let's
it.
do spoilers.
Let's do spoilers.
They wouldn't spoil this, right?
Oh,
You
God,
can't spoil this,
please
right?
don't spoil
Spoiler talk, spoiler talk, anime movie podcast, spoiler talk. All right. First things first, I have to say our main character, Kotaro, pissed me off so much. I
so
fucking hated
irritating.
that kid.
Just unbelievably irritating. And it wasn't, sometimes in dub versions, it's like, oh God, this voice actor is terrible. This just the voice alone, grates on me. But it was the dialogue too. It was just for so long,
Yeah,
just being a little asshole,
his voice was grating, and he was just a fucking brat.
right?
Like a brat. I wanted to
Constantly.
fucking slap the shit out of him.
I kind of get it when you have a character at the beginning and you're like, the audience needs to know that this character has room to grow. So there's like little annoying things like there has to be a reason why this person needs to change or needs to kind of go through the story that they're going to be going through. But he just a very, very sustainable level of obnoxiousness was withheld
Yeah,
for so long.
he never got more likable.
No.
And I was like, even at the end, I don't care anymore. Like this, we're just spoiling the fuck. I'm not going through the whole plot or anything.
Sure.
At the end, so what the Ming people are trying to do? They're trying to kill Kotaro because he's apparently like this prophesized, chosen person, and they need to kill him at this certain hour and drink his blood or something in order to get this medicine that makes people immortal. And like,
The Xi'an
yeah, the Xi'an medicine.
medicine.
And when the samurai dude that he is hanging out with, and I'm saying samurai dude because this dude literally has no name. He's called No Name, so I'll call him No Name from the rest for the rest of this podcast. But when No Name saves him, he's still a fucking brat. And he's like,
Yeah,
man, why
and
did it
the
took you so long? It's like, dude, go
and
fuck
the
yourself.
movie tried to play it off like, oh, now we like each other and these characters
Yeah,
are sympathetic to the audience, and now
this is our
yes,
rapport,
a
you know.
rapport, and we're doing callbacks to earlier in the movie, and earlier in the movie this was us being bitchy, and
Hmm.
now it's the rapport we have. And I was just like, oh, my eyes are rolling so hard.
Yeah, I found this kid like so unlikable and
Yeah.
never grew on me. Like there was never one moment of like, all right, I like this kid.
Yeah, I mean, I even the way he cared about his dog kind of bothered me because, like, I just knew immediately as soon as I saw the dog, I was like, something's gonna happen to this dog, and I know I'm gonna be sad about it. You don't put a dog as a main character or sort of like sidekick of a main character in a movie like this unless something terrible will happen to it. And I thought it was actually just going to die, and that would lead the kid to get really angry or make some kind of change in his character. But instead just gets poisoned, which is still upsetting, to see a dog like lying on its side and vomiting out the side of its mouth. Um, but but even the way he cared about the dog, he didn't seem to be that upset. It was like somebody had broken his toy rather
Mm,
than like his dog was potentially dying.
yeah, I look, I just didn't like the kid. I
Yeah,
did not like that kid at all. Didn't like anything about him. I mean, I thought that I mean the design, the character design of him was decent,
it's
like it was
fine.
fine, but everything about its characterization, like who he is as a person, the voice acting, the dialogue, I fucking hated that kid.
We never really fully get the story about what he was doing in the Ming Dynasty for the 2 years that he was there. I mean,
Yeah.
we get like a little bit of backstory about how he got orphaned.
Hmm.
I don't know if he is Chinese and then came over to Japan and started learning the language, or was Japanese, went there for 2 years, parents died, and then somebody brought him back, but he was going to be sold or something.
Yeah, I'm a little foggy on the details about like his backstory. All I know is like he was like he sucked, dude. Like he was it was weird because he was like the main character and then also like a damsel in distress. He
Yeah.
didn't get any more badass or anything. Like for as much as he's hanging out with this awesome swordsman and legendary samurai dude or whatever, like this kid picked up no skills. He learned how to ride a
I was
horse.
about to say that. He learned how to ride a horse. That's
Big,
kind of what happened by the end of this movie.
big fucking
I
whoop.
think by the end of this movie, the kid hadn't grown as a character at all, but had started to like and trust the samurai more and knew how to ride a horse. Like
Yeah.
those are all the changes that that happened for this kid. So I think it's hard, for me when it's like, well, I think this is the main character, but I don't give a shit about the main character. So, the stakes, I'm kind of like,
Yeah, I just stopped thinking about him as the main character. I thought of him
mm,
as like just a MacGuffin, like that everyone's trying to get their hands on. I thought that the main characters were No Name and Luo Lang,
I could see that.
and I mean I like those guys. I like those guys. Those guys are pretty cool. But Luo Lang has this kind of I don't know. I feel like it's like a stereotypical archetype bad guy thing where he's like, I don't care about anybody. I'm just looking for a worthy opponent or
Yeah.
whatever. And I was like,
Okay, bro.
okay, all right. But I mean, that's all right. But he was just like a brutal, fucking psychopathic killer dude. And he got in. It seems like he got into the army because he was like, I like killing motherfuckers,
Yeah.
and that's my main objective. And I don't care. I don't have really loyalty to anybody whatever, I'll just kill motherfuckers.
I mean, he just felt like the biggest high schooler who was like the, quarterback of the high school football team and a
Mm.
bully, and he's just bored of high school but just wants to find that one other quarterback that he can butt heads with or have a pissing match with or whatever.
I don't know. I don't see it that way. But I see like this character in action movies all the time. The guy that's
Mm,
like, "Oh, finally someone that can match my power," or whatever.
mm.
I don't, yeah, and I see that so much, but like it's an action movie stereotype, I guess. So I'm like, okay, all right, fine. You're like this mercenary dude that obviously isn't from China or the Ming Dynasty or whatever, and you're just there because you like wrecking shit, you know? And I was like, okay, yeah, I can get down with that.
Yeah, I mean, and in the end, when he chops the arm off of the older guy that he's kind of um, under, I don't know, he was
Yeah,
called like Bowie Lang or something.
the guy with the gun.
Yeah,
And
and he
as soon
had the
as that guy
gun.
pulled out that gun to shoot No Name, I was like, fucking Luo Lang is not gonna allow that to happen.
Yeah, but I think I mean, he's kind of going like, no, I need this fight to happen because I need to have this.
Hmm.
It's not this like point of honor. It's not like, no, this great warrior shouldn't die at the, hands of this man with a gun.
Hmm.
He should die a warrior's death. It's not like that. It's just like, I found my favorite toy and I need to
Yeah,
play with it. You can't like
yeah. If we would have rewritten that scene, it should have been what you were saying.
yeah.
Like this guy is like a great warrior. He just took out all of our fucking highest soldiers, and you're gonna shoot him in the back like a coward, then slice the guy's fucking
And then you know what? I might have cared a little bit about like Luo Lang. I might have
yeah,
been like, oh, dude's got some honor.
yeah.
Like, I'm kind of into this now.
He's a fucking crazy killer, but he's an honorable crazy killer or
Right?
something, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. He's got a sense of honor. He wants to, fight man to man, all of that business. I don't know. When they started fighting, then, I care more about No Name, I guess, than the kid or than Luo Lang, but I still really wasn't rooting for him that much in that fight. I didn't really care who came out of that fight. Like, I was almost like, almost would make sense if they killed each other. Like they died on each other's
That's what I
blades
thought
and they
was
were
going to
kind of
happen.
equal in power and they'd finally found their match and then that happens. And I was like, and I'm fine with that. Don't
Yeah.
find it even upsetting at all.
That's what I thought happened at the end because they were like, at the end in the final battle, like they're very close to each other. And No Name is saved by this stupid fucking thing that the kid gave him as a
Which
payment
it
for.
looks like a CVS travel toothbrush case.
Yeah, yeah.
Just like a kind of long and a little bit oblong on the sides, a little bit
Yeah.
translucent and kind of
It was
green,
just like a
you know?
green tube, and he was like,
Yeah.
"This is worth a lot of money." And but it's one of those things like, and I've seen this in action movies all the time, where like somebody will shoot somebody, and it's like a book that was given to them by
Yeah.
their little brother stops the
Yes.
bullet or some shit. So it's something like that happens, and Lua Lang gets fucking stabbed. But I thought they both died, and I definitely there was a little bit of me that was worried that No Name was going to die and like
Mm.
sacrifice himself to save the kid.
Oh God, that would have made me angry.
Yeah, that's what I was really worried about what was going to happen. I was like, dude, why? Here's the thing, too, is like, I feel like No Name and Kotaro don't have enough of a bond. It's not like No
Yeah.
Name is like, I see a little bit of me in you when I was younger or something. You know what I mean? It's just like, this kid's annoying. He's a fucking asshole to No Name. And No Name's just like, I like you, kid. Like, why?
Right, exactly. I think at the end, when they're kind of riding off into the distance, it felt much more like a bond of convenience or circumstance where it's like, well, neither of us really have anybody else in the world. So I guess this is us now. And we should
Mm.
just kind of be okay with that. or like it. I didn't feel like, oh, I feel like through this adventure they've really bonded. I can totally see why they would be attached to each other or care about each other. It's like,
Yeah, I didn't see even their like relationship grow. Like, I mean, it did, quote unquote, it did. Like, they have callback jokes at the end or whatever.
yeah.
But I just don't know why No Name would care about this kid. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, it felt more like, well, we kind of need to make it seem like they've gotten closer by this point in the story, but we haven't really cared about it up to now. So we'll just try and write it in with dialogue and make it seem like, oh, the audience should just assume that these two people have grown closer and care about each other.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. What I was going to say in the non spoiler part is that this kind of reminded me of like a feudal, story, like it kind of like an Indiana Jones story to me, because it has that like kind of mysticism where it's like we got to kill this kid for like
mm,
immortality and like for this medicine, and then I felt like No Name was Indiana Jones, and then I was like, well, what's this when you were talking about like what's the overall story and what do you take from this? And then I was like, well, what do you take from an Indiana Jones movie? And then I was like, does Kat hate Indiana Jones movies? Because I felt like this was kind of similar to a bit of it like an Indiana Jones story, because it has like the mysticism of it. It has the badass action hero guy that's just kind of, he is a part of the story, but he didn't like sign up for it, you know? Indiana Jones is always just like, I'm here to like research this shit, and then all this crazy shit starts happening.
but even then, like, Indiana Jones is a character that you like,
But
that
why?
has also, I mean, he has his charms, but also he wants something. You know, he's a character who you understand his goals.
He wants to put shit in museums, baby.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing, like, this kid just wants to get away from whatever he's being chased from, which
Oh
is
no, no,
which is
I'm
very
not.
much like damsel in distress like.
I'm not saying that the kid is Indiana Jones. I'm saying No Name is Indiana Jones.
Yeah, I know, but I keep coming back to the kid as really being the protagonist since we follow him from the beginning.
Yeah,
Um, and I think that No Name is absolutely a more relatable character and more interesting. Obviously, has more of a backstory. He's the only person that we get kind of flashbacks of backstory with.
yeah, and those were the ones when I was like, I would like to see a prequel of No Name.
Yeah, and I didn't dislike him, and I don't dislike Indiana Jones movies, but I think that Indiana Jones movies tend to be more entertaining,
Mm.
and a little bit more thought out. There's like a little bit more interest in the mysticism to me. I don't know. I think that this felt like the rough draft of a script that needed another looking over, where somebody's like, all right, cool. You've really got the bare bones of your story here. I can really see where you're going with this. But now we need to give this some heart. We need to get the audience invested. We need to have a point for why they've watched this. Or it needs to be something of interest here. Because I feel like some of these themes of like exoticism or what it means to be barbaric, you know, they definitely had this sort of culture clash where you start to see relativism between the two cultures,
Hmm.
where this idea that the Chinese think of their emperor as almost being, you know, sort of close to God,
Hmm.
and you can't question the commands. And then when the Akike are coming to save their lord, as soon as they see that their lord's been put up as like kind of, I guess, as like a shield, like basically if you come in, like your lord will die. And the Chinese are like, well, the lord must be like their emperor, so there's no way that they'll come in, we're safe. And then, you know, he immediately gets a like an arrow to the forehead.
Yeah, right to the dome.
And they're like, oh my god, they like these barbarians, like they don't think of their lord that way at all. We've, you know, misjudged them. But to them, it kind of seems barbaric that they would be killing a child in order to make this elixir.
Yeah,
You know, and I don't know. What are your thoughts about immortality?
like would I want to be immortal?
Sure. Or do you think it's something that people should strive for?
Um, I mean, immortal means that like you'd be alive even after the earth dies. And that wouldn't be fun. Like I would like to be young for a long if I could be like my like how I am now,
Hmm.
30-year-old Joe until I'm whenever like 80 and then die, if I could stay young for the duration of my life, I would want that.
Oh, I'd be into that too. Yeah.
But then I think we've talked about this a lot before about how I'm very curious about like what would happen after I'm dead.
Hmm.
I'm curious about, you know, the next things that happen, like how do human beings go extinct? How does the world go extinct? And it bums me out that I won't get to know that kind of stuff because, well, hopefully, unless like fucking a comet comes and crashes tomorrow and
Yeah.
then we all die. Um, but I'd like to read a Wikipedia page about like how the humans go extinct. You know what I mean?
So you've got like a little bit of FOMO for the time after you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have a lot of curiosity about that. Do you not?
I don't, and I've actually asked a few people about this because I had this conversation a couple of times, and then I was like, I thought more people would share my views on this. And then the more I talk to people, the more I realize like nobody seems to share my views on this. I am so uninvested in what happens
In the human race,
in the human race beyond my time here.
you're an incredibly selfish person.
How is that such? I don't think it's any of my business. I
I don't
don't.
I don't know
I
how
don't
you
know.
couldn't be interested in like knowing that. Like just being like, "Oh wow, that's what does us in," or like, "That's the next techno. Wow, I wish I would have had that technology when I was
I
alive."
don't.
That's
I
fascinating.
I mean, to me, it's like either you have the opportunity to make yourself sad about the things that you missed out on, or make yourself sad about the ways that things go terribly, terribly wrong. I, I just, yeah, I like the idea of it being a mystery and for it to not really be any of my business and to be the business of the, people who come next or, continue on.
See, I feel like it's not even like I'm sad that I don't I'm just fascinated. Like
Mm,
even looking back at history books and learning about how those people lived and just being like, wow, that is fascinating.
mm.
That continues on for me being like, well, what's the next thing? Like that would be fascinating. Wow, that's crazy. Oh man, that's really cool that they can use it like that. Oh wow, dinosaurs are back
I
and
kind
they kill
of
everyone.
I kind of like the point in technology that we've gotten to where there are so many things that are possible and so many things that are incredible and science is almost becoming like magic now. Science
Mm-hmm,
is
mm-hmm.
becoming like the movies said it would become. But then there's also still so much that's analog and still so much that you can do with your hands and the dirt and manual labor and all these other things that make me feel like we're still really connected to humanity. And I don't really want to know where it goes. I especially after the next like 60 years, it kind of frightens me to think about where things might go by that point or where the
Oh,
world might be to that point. I'm much more interested in what's happened previously.
dude, it frightens the shit. Dude, I read stuff on Twitter that I'm like, the world is going to hell. This is terrifying. This is crazy, but it's fascinating. I remember a while ago, um, when I was on OKCupid, they would have you answer all of these questions to determine who would be like your best match on the dating app or
Hmm.
whatever. And one of the questions was like, would it be exciting? Do you think it would be exciting if nuclear war or World War III broke out? And it was like yes or no. And I said yes, it would be crazy exciting. It would be like what the fuck is going on? What's happening? The world would be on their toes. That would be fascinating. Now I'm not saying I want it to happen,
Yeah, and
but if it
exciting is a
did,
weird word
but if
there.
it did, it'd be like fascinating and be like, whoa, I lived through this.
Yeah.
But again, I for the love of God, I do not want it to happen. But if it does, it'd be crazy.
Yeah. I've always been fascinated by disaster and disastrous situations. Um, but kind of, in the here and now, I mean, if somebody just told me tomorrow, like, hey, drink this and you'll be immortal, you can live forever, or drink this and you'll know everything that happens to the human race and the planet from now on. Drink this, it's water, you'll get really hydrated. I'll choose the water.
Wow. Well, you would still be in the Garden of Eden if you were Eve. You have no little bit of temptation of knowledge in your bones at all. We would all.
What a thing to say. I didn't say I wouldn't want to know anything. I
Nope,
just
nope.
say
You just want to drink some water. You want a sippledy-dippledy of some H2O. It's like you want to know infinite knowledge or infinite life. You're like, I'm just thirsty. Can I just get something from the spigot?
You know what I would do? I would then hand you the glass of know everything that happens to people.
Yeah, that's what I would want. I would not want immortality.
And I would give that to you because I know that that's important to you.
Yeah, well, that's very kind of you.
Isn't it?
I take back what I say about you being incredibly selfish.
Hey, thanks. But I don't know. That got really tangential. But I kind of wanted to make a point about how we have a sort of foreign army or group of warriors in another country, and then each of those groups kind of have a representative that is foreign to each of those groups.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot about that kind of culture clash, or what does it mean to be exotic? I remember traveling and I was talking to somebody in Spain, and I was telling them about how some of their posters, I was like, oh, I kind of thought you'd have like pictures and advertisements that would be people that looked more Spanish. And they're like, oh, well, that's because, it's very attractive to be exotic. And I was looking, it was like a blonde haired, like blue eyed girl. And I was like, oh, yeah, that would be exotic here because, exotic to us is very different from what other people might consider to be exotic to them. And there's something different and sexy about, what doesn't look like you, but is still beautiful and all of that.
What do you think is considered exotic in America? Because we are the great melting pot. So I don't know, like, what could they put on a poster that's like...
Well, I think this is more of a melting pot than some other places, for sure.
Yeah.
But I think that we still do have an idea of people who look exotic, and a lot of it's just not white.
Yeah, I guess that's true. That's a good point. I was, feel free to edit this out, by the way, but it's
Sure.
like, I was thinking of like, in Sweden, like their exotic posters, just like a bunch of Hispanic people on the posters, just like, wow, this is so exotic. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about, what do you know much about sort of Chinese medicine and the Chinese medicine black market?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
I only know a little bit
you?
about
Oh.
a little bit.
Oh my God.
I only know a little bit about Chinese medicine through some like hippy dippy candles and sandals kind of white women talking about Chinese medicine and meridians and qi.
See, I would not trust it. I wouldn't trust their information.
Yeah. And people who study, Chinese medicine will basically like read your tongue and tell you what's wrong with you based on something about your tongue. And they'll be like, oh, you have problems with your liver, which is related to this element. And therefore, these are the things that you need in your life. And you should also take this kind of supplement or whatever. So there's that like idea of Chinese medicine. And then there's also, I was working on a wildlife veterinary show, and there was an episode about, I think it was Vietnam, and there were pangolins. Are you familiar with pangolins?
No.
They're so cute. They're like they're like these kind of armadillo creatures, but they look like Pokemon and they look like they shouldn't exist.
That sounds
And they're
awesome.
absolutely adorable.
Googling them
Yeah,
now.
definitely Google pangolins. Pangolins were also blamed for the beginning of coronavirus for a hot second. I don't know if they still have that blame on them
Really?
for some reason. Yeah, I don't know. But basically, there is some kind of Chinese medicine where the pangolin scales are um, used to create something. And I don't know what the medicine is, but it means that there's a big black market for smuggling pangolins.
Mm-hmm.
And part of this episode that I was working on was a pangolin triage situation where they had found a truck full of pangolins. And they were, all in netted bags and squished together. And they were all like on the brink of dying of hypothermia.
Mm-hmm.
And several of the pangolin in that situation did die of hypothermia. But they were being smuggled out of the country and being taken to China. And you also get that with rhino horns and like
I know rhino horns and like elephant tusks and just certain types of furs that poachers are just like going crazy over.
Yeah, and I think that the elephant tusks is more about ivory.
Yeah.
But I don't know enough about it, and I don't think. I mean, China is a huge country, and I don't believe that every Chinese person believes in Chinese medicine that specifically targets animals in these sorts of situations. But watching this, I was like, is this like a commentary on Chinese medicine and about poaching or the black market and smuggling? Because I mean, you're basically coming in and saying like we need to kill something in order to make this medicine.
Yeah, I don't think it. Here's how I know that there's no like deeper themes on this movie.
Go on.
That
I already believe you.
There's no themes section on its Wikipedia page. Like every other movie that we've done an episode on, and I've gone to the Wikipedia page to like get some more quick information before we start recording, they'll have like a section that says themes. And this one did not have it. I think this is just a bare bones action movie. We're supposed to believe that, Kotaro learned a lesson or something. And what's his face? No Name. He broke his curse. He broke his oath to not draw his sword again after he, like in his backstory, he like kills a mother and her kid. And he was like, I'm never fucking opening this sword again. Yeah. And he did it to save a kid this time, which I think is like a
classic
lesson.
Story of redemption.
Yeah, so there is, I guess, growth and some kind of something going on there. But, I mean, if you're looking for like, this is a commentary on blah, 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 I don't think it's happening. I think this is literally just...
Is it just a little bit racist against Chinese people?
It might be. I don't know. I'm not familiar with the racism of between those two countries. I'm only familiar with good old-fashioned American racism, okay?
There is a pretty big history of racism between...
I mean, there's racism everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's stuff you're like, what? Why? When?
There were some pretty bad things between Japanese and the Chinese.
Yeah. I mean, one of my old roommates was, he's from Saudi Arabia, and I was dating a girl that was from, I forget where it was, but it was another, like, Algeria. And he was like, fucking Algerian lady, and they're all thieves or something. I was like, what? What's up with this racism? I think I told you about how before I moved to Los Angeles, I had never met anyone that was, or I didn't know anyone that was, what are the type of people that live in Glendale? Armenian. I didn't know any Armenians before I moved here. And then I moved here, and then a bunch of people were like, really racist against Armenians. I was like, this is a new racism. I don't understand. Like, people were like, yeah, well, how do you feel about Armenians? I was like, I don't know.
I formed no opinions.
I'm sure they're fine.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's fine. They're like, I don't know, man. I'm like, Jesus Christ. There's new racisms that you can learn about every single day. And today it's Japanese and Chinese, apparently.
Yeah, it reminds me of living in England and speaking to somebody who was English, and they were talking about Scottish people, and they were like, "Oh, I probably shouldn't say that. That's pretty racist." And I was like, "What?" I was like, "How is an English person racist against a Scottish person?" But they do see it as racism.
Yeah, because we think of racism as like how could a white person be racist against another white person? Because in America, it's like white and the black and Hispanic and all of the other minorities in America, because white people, I guess, are the majority. But when you go to another country and it's like, yeah, the fucking dirty Irish, I'm like,
Yeah.
what? Wow. Moral of the story: don't be racist,
Yeah,
everybody.
yeah.
Just
Don't
don't be
don't be a
racist.
racist jerk. Just
Don't learn from Sword of the Stranger and don't be racist.
I wanted there to be some deeper meaning in the fact that there was so much sort of like so much in it about different cultures. I mean, I guess one thing that I'd say was a little bit hard for me was, you know, that thing in all American movies, especially made for children, that if it's in another country, people are going to be speaking English, but they're going to be speaking it with an accent. And
Mm-hmm.
growing up, you just get used to that. You're like, I think French people just speak English, but it's with, you know, like
A
funny,
British accent.
yeah. um, but here they did a mix of having the Chinese people. Sometimes they were speaking Chinese and they were subtitled in English, and then sometimes they were speaking English to each other,
Mm-hmm.
and then all of the people who were supposed to be Japanese were always speaking English. So I was thinking, you know, in the subtitled version, you know, I wonder if it'd be more confusing to watch it, because sometimes the
That's
people who'd be
true.
speaking Chinese would be speaking Japanese, but they'd always be subtitled.
Yeah.
Or would the subtitles say like in parentheses in Chinese or something? I
Yeah. Because if you don't speak Japanese or Chinese, you wouldn't. It just sounds like whatever anyway. So you wouldn't
True.
distinguish between it. I thought that it was actually kind of clever how they did the like use of foreign exoticism, I guess,
Mm.
because and that's how you figured out who the bad guys were with the Chinese, because they weren't speaking English. You don't speak English here, you get a boot in the ass. You know what I
Jesus
mean?
Christ, yeah.
Fucking America, baby. But yeah, the protagonists are always speaking English, and when the antagonists are around the protagonist, they're speaking Chinese and it's subtitled. But when the antagonists are just speaking to the other antagonists, they're speaking English. So I can see how that could be confusing if someone's
That
like,
started to get confusing for
"What?"
me just a
Yeah.
little bit. And I kind of caught on to what was going on.
Hmm.
But but yeah, that was weird. Especially because I, you know, at some point I was like, oh, they do speak the language. They just don't speak the language in front of the people in the country, you know, in the way that like I remember being in Wales, and I walked into a pub with a friend, and all the Welsh people were speaking English to each other.
Hmm.
And then as soon as we ordered at the bar and they could hear that we were not Welsh, they all switched to Welsh. And it was so bizarre to me. Um, but I kind of thought that it was that kind of situation for a second, and I was like, "Oh, they speak the language, but they'll be speaking their mother tongue to each other when the other people are around." And I was like, "Oh no, no, I think this is just the dub trying to follow what the original was doing with the language." But
Yeah. Would you have preferred it if the Ming people just always spoke Chinese and all of their dialogue was subtitled?
possibly, but I think what was confusing for me is that, you know, I could probably follow this more easily in a film where not everybody was wearing kind of feudal gear, because, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I can't immediately look. I mean, once somebody was dressed as a samurai, I was like, "Oh, that's definitely a samurai outfit."
Yeah.
But before that, I was like, I mean, I think that looks like Chinese clothing, but
Yeah, I remember there was a point at the beginning where, the big bad soldiers all had these red capes. And then
yeah.
there were people that were wearing kind of straw capes, and I didn't know whose side they were on because it seemed like they were on both sides.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe if we knew more about Japanese and Chinese history, we might immediately be like, oh, of course, red capes.
Yeah.
That'll be like these people. Um, but I did kind of figure it out. It just for a little while confused me slightly,
Yeah. Yeah, I was with you. I was a little confused
and
about
maybe
that
it was
too.
because it was more fun to think about than just the plot or the characters of this film.
Wow. Wow. Dang. Man. What did you think of the action scenes? Did you at least like the action scenes? Do you think they were visually striking and cool?
I thought they were pretty cool. I didn't particularly like the use of CGI throughout this film.
Yeah.
Very occasionally, I'd be like, "Oh, they're using CGI, and it's actually not bothering me that much right now."
Hmm.
But for the most part, I wasn't a huge fan. Um, and it did come into some of the action scenes sometimes. I thought some of the weapons were very cool, though.
Absolutely.
I was a big fan of the axe whip boomerang
Right?
situation.
I'd never seen that before in my life. I was going to bring that up. That was awesome. And I
That's
wish
pretty
that
cool.
lady would have gotten some more play.
Yeah. Yeah, because you kind of see these characters as though they're in a, like all the Chinese characters in a classroom hanging out all the time, and you don't really get to see what they're capable of. You have a lot of these little battles where one person seems to kick a lot of ass in the battle. You don't
Hmm.
ever get to like explore more about each of these characters. But then there was like, double
Yeah.
sided scythe guy. And I was impressed when he managed to like get his scythe lodged into somebody's skull and then just whipped them around in a giant circle, just kind of bitch slapping everybody in the circle with this man's entire body. That was also of note.
Yeah. That was cool as hell. Well, there was also like one of the beginning fights, the dude's just using a whip. And I thought
Mm,
that was cool. I was like, bro, how about, because he had like a sword to begin with, and I think he got unsworded um, by No Name. And then he was like, oh yeah, you think I'm done now? I got a fucking whip, bro. And I am gonna like, he was whipping it all around himself as I guess like a showmanship kind of,
mm.
like when swordsmen in movies, when they just like do all this like flourishing to like show off, be like, check out how badass of a swordsman I am. He was doing that with a whip, and I was like, I've never seen that in my life. That's cool as hell.
I'm sure I've seen it, and I don't know where. I thought some of the sound effects for the whip were absurd. Like like at some point I was like, is that the sound of a machine gun? Like what are they playing at? I just like I did think it was kind of cool that he got choked by his own whip though
Yeah, oh yeah.
in the end there.
But definitely the big, big, big winner here was the whip axe woman.
Yeah,
She
whip
should have.
axe boomerang rope
I mean,
situation.
you knew it was going to come down to a sword versus a sword, but like that weapon is so cool.
She committed a lot of carnage.
Yeah. She chopped
Really,
off loads of heads with that.
really effectively.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And she got shot by like 97 arrows.
I was wondering about that because it seemed like a lot of the Chinese warriors were very difficult to kill in comparison to the Akaike. And I was kind of trying to figure out who I'm rooting for. And usually, if you're watching something, unless it's like you're going towards the bottom of the second act and it's supposed to be getting to this dark time, where you're like, how are they ever going to get out of this situation? Normally, whoever you're rooting for, more of them tend to stay alive. Like they tend to be harder to kill. It's usually the baddies who kind of, it's kind of like stab, you're dead, scratch, you're dead,
Mm.
push, you're dead. And they're kind of making their way through these people. Instead, it was like, wait, are these supposed to be the good people, or am I not rooting for anybody? Because it seemed like the sort of Chinese warriors that we never kind of learn the names of are very hard to kill. And I wonder, were they already drinking some like immortality elixir? Were they already like hitting that stuff up?
Yeah, it looked like they were taking some kind of like vitamin supplement thing at a certain point.
Microdosing on the
Yeah.
immortality elixir?
I'll say this. I think that it was like the Chinese soldiers were, it was just an elite group of 8 to 10 badass fucking killers. And the what were the Akaiki?
Akaike, yeah, it's like
Akaike?
AKAI.
They had a lot of cannon fodder. There weren't a lot of like named featured people. There was like two people. By the time they got to the final battle, it was like there were two people that we were introduced to and like kind of got a backstory of, or
Yeah.
a little bit, a tiny bit of that. And then the rest of it was just like cannon fodder, nameless soldiers. That's like, yeah, they're just there to get their fucking heads chopped off by axe on a string lady. So that's what I was taking as like these Chinese soldiers were so elite that they only needed like 10 of them to just wipe out a whole army.
I'd
And
buy that.
then Lord fucking the head of the Itadore. Itadore, he's the guy that's kind of like a power hungry schmuck, and he kills Lord Akeike. He sends his like archer dude to like just shoot him in the fucking head when they're holding him as like kind of ransom hostage guy. That guy has a nice little battle with Luo Lang, and it's because I feel like he's like one of the elite Akaiki soldiers, Japanese soldiers.
And they had a little scrimmage
Yeah.
earlier on.
They had a little bit of they had a scrimmage when Luo Lang just waltzes into the dojo and he's like, come on in. And he gets his ass handed to him and he's like, oh, this next time I see you, I'm better. I have my lance and I'm better with my lance than I am with a sword. So I'm going to fuck you up this time. And then he doesn't. He gets his ass handed to him
Yeah.
again. But it's like a nice little battle
It is good
to show
yeah,
that like he
it's-
is a warrior.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting that those two sort of big battles at the end for Luo Lang are both with people he's had these like little scrimmages with earlier. And I think the one with No Name that he has earlier on, it's literally, I don't know, is it supposed to create some kind of suspense or foreshadowing, or I've read that you know if a character faces a foe and survives, it kind of ups the ante. It makes the tensions even higher. Whereas if you just kill a character, then it just completely dies. The momentum of everything dies with that character. But every time you have a moment where you come in contact with the villain and then it's like a near miss or whatever, it means that the final battle will be all that more exciting. And I kind of feel like it was trying to like do that a little bit, but it was kind of random.
I really enjoyed that first fight between them. What I took from it, well, later on in the movie, No Name says like, "This isn't the first time we met." I thought I completely spaced, and I thought it was like he had met that guy in battle before, but then I was like, "Oh wait, no, he just talked about like a week ago when they ran into each other."
Yeah.
I thought it was like Luo Lang recognized when he first saw him, that first scrimmage that we see them. He saw that the dude had a sword. He saw that he seemed like a capable dude. And also, he's just like a psycho killer.
Yeah.
So maybe he's like, whatever, I haven't killed anybody in a fucking while. Let me kill somebody. So he messes with No Name.
Right.
I took it as like, it's kind of one of those things where he saw him and recognized his aura of like, oh, this guy's up to something. This guy's got some kind of mystique to him. When you like, there's some kind of mysterious looking person that walks by you and you still kind of like give him a side glance.
And you're like, I bet their name is Bones.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, somebody walks by you and you're like, this person is like a little suspicious or whatever, That's how I think Luo Lang felt about No Name, because, I mean, he's carrying a sword and he's got, he's probably a fit dude and he probably looks fit. And what I thought was awesome about that first scrimmage between those two was the obstruction of the eyes. there's like, you only see their mouths except for when Luo Lang slices through No Name's hat, which then exposes his eyes. Because I think that, I don't know why, but just like that obscuring of the eyes makes shit so much more badass. And that first fight was so badass to me. And No Name didn't even pull out his sword. And Luo Lang's like, why aren't you pulling out your sword? Was it just for show? And that's before we know like the story behind why he kind of swore an oath to not take his sword out because of his horrible past or whatever, the sins that he has committed, and he didn't want to do it anymore. And yeah, I just thought that scene was really cool.
I really didn't like the voice acting of the henchman that was with Luo Lang.
Yeah, it felt a little stiff.
It was weirdly androgynous. It was very stiff, and it felt very like, I was like, is Daria hanging out with him? Like,
yeah, I'll agree with you
going
on that. I also kind of didn't like Luo Lang's voice. His voice was a little weird, but like
in Chinese, it was suddenly an octave lower. Like he already had a low voice.
Yeah.
And then he came in Chinese, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, his voice was like, let me tell you about the elixir. And then in Chinese, was like, like, what? Did you get a pitch shifter for that or something? How do you get that low, bro?
I also really hated all of the ADR for the dog.
I didn't mind the dog. I guess I didn't pay that much attention to it.
When it was growling, it was like, did they use lion roaring sound effects? Like
no, it sounded like a dog.
It did not. It absolutely did not.
This is, you know what? This is the end of the podcast. I can't work with you anymore. It sounded like, it did not sound like a lion. Get out of here.
It was ridiculous.
Everybody watch Sword of the Stranger. Email in if you think it sounded like a lion. The anime movie podcast at gmail.com. If it doesn't sound like a lion, also email in. We'll put a poll up or something.
I think what first initially bothered me is you get the dog running through the forest in the first scene, and I was already annoyed at the panting because it didn't match what his mouth was doing, which shouldn't matter for a dog. I get that. But it was so loud, and the sound design was bad with it, because usually you should have sound design of something that's far away sounding quieter. And as it gets closer, it should get louder. And then as it passes, it should get quieter again. But it was like the same volume almost the entire time. And so it drew my attention. Immediately, I was like, what is that panting? And every time it whined, like that's not how dogs whine. And it whined constantly about literally anything.
The dog had a case of the anime gasps.
Yes, exactly. But it was like whining, and it was bugging me so much. Oh my God.
I think we also need to talk about how every elderly character in this movie had an old prospector voice.
That was ridiculous.
We're gonna go get some gold. Hey, what are you doing here, fella?
Do you think they had one guy play each of those characters, and they were like, "Hey, how many like prospector voices do you have in your repertoire?"
Yeah, I don't know. That was bad. Like anyone that wasn't kind of a warrior had a pretty bad voice acting. I mean, except for like, I thought that the Chinese emperor dude was fine. The lord guys were all okay. I hated the kid's voice.
Yeah.
Hated the old prospectors. I didn't mind the dog. You hated the dog.
I did hate the dog. Yeah. Although the dog is also the character that I might have cared the most about.
Wow. Shots fired. That's fucking No Name. How am I supposed to care about? He doesn't even have a fucking name.
You're right. That sounds just like me.
This is what I thought was going to happen at the end. I thought that the kid was going to give him a name.
He did say that he was planning on it at some point.
Man, I didn't do that.
No.
I was like, come on, dude. You give him a fucking name. You said you were going to give him a name. Give him a name. Come on.
I'm sure that's Sword of the Stranger, too.
Oh. Yeah. But also, like, fucking we didn't mention this either. No Name is a redhead.
Yes.
And he just dyes his hair to blend in with society because people ostracized him or something, said he didn't have a soul. You fucking ginger. What are you doing in Japan, ginger? So, yeah, I mean, that was like a weird little side characteristic that comes up once and that's never mentioned. It's never mentioned before. He talks about it once and then it's never mentioned again. Like,
Yeah, and you kind of have his red hair is in the flashbacks, but I was kind of expecting it to be like a bright red.
me
I
too.
thought it would be really noticeable, and it really wasn't.
I thought it was going to be something because in the end, they're fighting in the snow. I thought that the dye was going to wear off in the snow, and Luo Lang was going to be like, "I recognize you from this battle before,"
Right.
because
Like they might be from a similar place.
yeah, like maybe there's some kind of connection between them, but that didn't happen. And like, why would you bring up the red hair thing at all? Like, what's the
Well,
point?
that's why I was like struggling to be like, is there something to this? The fact that these two foreign warriors, or people who are not, or who are naturalized but weren't born in the country that they're representing, like it feels like that should be significant, and maybe it's supposed to be in some way that I'm not getting, but it feels unexplored, and it's just kind of like, well, wouldn't it be interesting if they were just both not from that country originally, um and it doesn't go much of anywhere.
Yeah, the red haired thing didn't go anywhere.
And I don't know how I feel about like the fact that the two countries champions, like the sort of Chinese champion and the Japanese champion, aren't really Chinese or Japanese.
Well, we don't know if the red haired dude is because he's like my origin. I don't know. I was orphaned on a shipwreck or something.
Saved from a sinking ship.
Yeah, but there's not too many red haired Japanese or Chinese people.
Not naturally, no.
Yeah, no. So I believe it's safe to assume he's not from there.
Mm.
And the white dude with blonde hair and blue eyes, that dude's definitely not Chinese, unless there's some kind of weird mutation in his DNA or something. I don't know.
I didn't take Chinese in high school, but I had some friends who did, and I chatted with the Chinese teacher at some point, and I don't remember how we got on the topic, but she was telling me that when she first came over to the US, she was filling out paperwork, and it asked for your hair color and eye color, and she was like, "What do you mean?" Like, everybody has the same hair color and eye color. Like, she did not understand like why she would have to fill that out on a
Wow.
form. But she came over and she was really young. And I found that super fascinating. But I think that this film visually here doesn't work potentially as well as it might work for a Japanese audience,
Hmm.
because especially if you're watching animes, so frequently they'll have different colored hair, wild color eyes, um, and so if we see a warrior has been dyeing his hair black and his hair is actually red, you don't immediately go like, oh, he was trying to look Japanese, you know, or if you see a blonde person, you might not be like, oh, they're definitely not from that place.
Well, if he's not from there and he's got red hair, and he's like, this will help me blend into society. It's like, I mean, there's other features about your face that would really stick out, buddy. Like, you just don't look Japanese, unless he's just the, outlier red-haired Japanese person. The only thing that's different about him is his red hair. I don't know. But
This is actually the backstory of Tom Cruise in The Last Samurai.
yeah. Yeah. Overall, like what I thought the animation was all right. Characters are fine. I thought the action scenes were cool. But we were talking during the movie that there's just it seems like unnecessary uses of CGI. Like
Yeah.
it's like the one that I pointed out that was like most egregious is it's like a 3 second shot of a stairwell and it's all CGI and then one character on it who's on the screen for like a split second before they switch back to like 2D. Like, why did you even include that?
Yeah, and we've seen it before where CGI is used to be like POV of, animal running through a forest or something, and it was POV from the horse, and I just thought it was so unnecessary,
Yeah.
and it didn't look very cool. It was just a moment to be like, hey, I'm CGI. I'm CGI. I'm doing CGI things. And you're like, okay.
I thought that the main characters looked cool, except for Kotaro. I mean, he was fine. But I thought Luo Lang looked cool. I thought that No Name looked cool. I thought the fucking weapons were all cool.
Very cool weapons.
I thought the elite Chinese soldiers all looked cool.
Mm,
I thought that the elite Japanese soldiers looked cool. But then like the cannon fodder, they all, looked the same. There wasn't a lot of uniqueness in their looks because they're cannon fodder.
sure.
At least they didn't go the route of that like awful like Nintendo Wii CG
Yeah, that's
characters.
true.
Like all of the background characters were still drawn.
Yeah.
Um, and the Emperor looked cool. Everybody looked. Everybody of importance looked cool.
Hmm.
Kotaro can fuck off and die though. I hate that kid. I wish they would have killed him. Um,
I did have in my notes just Kotaro is the fucking worst.
yeah, I wrote little kid annoying brat. That's my I write down everyone's name of importance and then a little description of them. He got little kid annoying brat.
I also really hated when they put in random lens flares. It was kind of like a CGI lens flare that would happen occasionally, and I was like, stop. Like, it doesn't make it look better. It's just annoying. Don't just put a lens flare or whatever. You'd be like, oh, this moment needs a lens flare. And it became this like cowbell situation in some of the fight scenes early on. It's like,
Cowbell situation. What do you mean?
This fight needs, it just needs a little more. Just needs,
That
just needs
might
a little
have
lens flare.
that might have been an of the era thing because I remember J.J. Abrams was like when he was first directing a lot of shit. There was lens flares.
It's just like, what
fucking
light
everywhere.
source is this coming from?
Lens flares all over the place. But yeah, I didn't really notice that. But if you're saying that it annoyed you, I'm sure it annoyed other people. Yeah, I don't know. But overall, I thought the animation was pretty cool. It was all right. Lens flares, cat hated them. Take note. Soundtrack wise, I thought that the soundtrack was cool during action scenes.
Yeah.
But then they started relying on the same song. And I felt like through the last 15, 20 minutes of the movie, the exact same song was playing for the duration of that.
Yeah.
And I was like, will you fucking... And then it's the same song that's in the credits. I was like, will you fucking stop with this song?
I do think that the music really worked for action scenes though. I thought that as a whole the action scenes were pretty entertaining to watch.
Yeah. Like, especially there was some where it was just drums. It was like... Dum, 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 dum. And I was like, this is great.
Into
Good
it.
shit. And then when they started to do this like uplifting pan flute music where it was just like, okay, this is cool, but they played it for probably like a half hour straight, and I was like, enough with the fucking pan flute already. A good googly moogly.
I mean, I'm a sucker for pan flute, so I'll always listen to some pan flute, honestly.
When I was living in New York City and my dad would come and visit me, there's always like panhandler, pan flute players in the subway. And my father hated the pan flute people.
That's so funny.
And like I never minded them when I was living in New York. It was like whatever. But if it's a half hour, if I had to listen to it for a half hour straight and it's the same song, the same pan flute riff, no. Get on out of here.
Riffing on a pan flute. Sure.
Sick riff on that pan flute, bro.
I mean, I lived in Scotland for 4 years and I started to hate bagpipes. I hated bagpipes so much. And then I remember going to a wedding and somebody was like, oh, there's a surprise that you're going to love. And I was like, really? Cool. And then this fucking bagpipe shows up. And I was like, no.
Was this? What did they say that this was the surprise?
Yeah. Yeah, because they're like, I just know that you've been living in Scotland. You probably miss it already. You probably really need to hear a bagpipe always. Oh,
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. So, any last thoughts before we crank our amps?
I would have preferred to play this as a video game and be the no-name character. And then at the end of the movie, after you fight that final boss, after the cutscene where, the final boss shoots the guy or kills the guy who's about to shoot you, then at the end, you should be able to choose your name. So it's like a video game backwards. Instead of being able to like choose your name in the beginning, like in an arcade game, at the end, once you've beaten it, you get to choose your name.
Okay. That's pretty cool.
Thanks. My amp for this is a 5. It would have been a little lower, except the dog did live. And because...
That's worth 4 points.
And because the fight scenes were pretty cool, I saw ways to die I hadn't thought of before, and some of the weapon design was pretty sweet.
Yeah. I'm cranking my amp to 6.5. I thought like I said, I thought the action scenes were cool. I still feel like it's kind of like a Indiana Jonesy type of thing, and I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff. But there was a lot of stuff that kind of annoyed me about it. You know what? I'm gonna go. 6.1.
6.1.
6.1.
See, I think I would have gotten a more Indiana Jonesy vibe off it if I'd actually seen some magic.
Oh yeah. Yeah, like they killed a kid beforehand, and then they're like, "Let's drink some of this."
Yeah, or anything, any evidence that they do have magic capabilities, or they can make something interesting. Because this just felt like people who were superstitious and in a cult and about to make a mistake.
That's a very good point. In Indiana Jones movies, the magic is shown. This amp has been cranked to 6 now.
Yeah, I got that 0.1 down.
I can't say that's Indiana Jonesy if they didn't show the magic.
There you go.
Goes to 6 out of 11.
All right. You've been listening to the Anime Movie Podcast.
Thank you for listening to our episode on The Sword of the Stranger. See ya.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Anime Movie Podcast. You can follow us on Instagram at the Anime Movie Podcast, and you can reach out via email at theanimemoviepodcast@gmail.com. Please subscribe, rate, and review, and tell a friend. Thanks. Have a good one. Bye.